MB hex, GT hex, what's the difference? It's a common question that we get, so stick around and I'll show you the difference between the two and which one's right for you. Before we get into the differences between the MB hex and the GT hex, let's start with the similarity. And the first thing that's similar is these are the exact same casting. Same diameter, same pitch, same cup, everything's exactly the same. They're produced at the exact same time in the same lot. The difference is actually in how they're machined so that they can go on different mud motors. And so that's where we'll start with the differences. Let's start first with the MB hex because that was the first one that we came out with. And this is the MB hex. And what sets this one apart is you can see that on this face back here, it's got a boss that sticks up. I think it's about 150 thou if I remember right, or so. But we leave that boss on there, and then it's got a hex profile in the middle of it, which of course the GT hex has also. But what's distinguishing about this hex is it is specifically designed to fit on the Mud Buddy drive shaft. So it is sized appropriately for the Mud Buddy drive shaft. Now, that's really the only thing that separates this thing from the GT hex. So let's dive into the GT hex. On the GT hex, from the top side, it looks exactly the same, but when we flip it over, there's a difference. Pretty big one, in fact, because if we turn it sideways, you can see that that boss is completely gone. So that boss gets milled off, and then we go and we cut in that ring. And that ring is commonly known as the XD cut, and that allows it to interface properly with the weedless system that Gatortail uses on their new XD models. Now this has been designed so that it is backwards compatible to the old GTRs, so you can do that as well. You're not limited to only the XDs, but that is the most obvious difference. Now there's another difference, and it's not obvious comparing the MB hex to the GT hex, and that is the hex itself. So it is hexagonal and it is a 3/4 hex, but it's cut with a different broach than the one that we use on the MB hex, and that's because there is a slight difference, basically 5/1000 of an inch, between a GT shaft and a Mud Buddy shaft, and so that's the difference. So this is cut with a broach specific to Gatortail sizing and specs, so that way it drops right on there just like a factory prop. You have the exact same fit qualities, and you don't have to worry about any risk or anything that might be perceived or real or otherwise. It doesn't really matter, but it will give you the factory fit. So that's the difference between the two. Not a whole lot, but it's a common question that we get. It's kind of hard to explain over the phone, especially to first-time mud motor owners. They don't really understand. If they bought a Mud Buddy, they don't understand what a Gatortail looks like. If they bought a Gatortail, they don't understand what a Mud Buddy looks like. So I thought this might be helpful to give you an idea of what the difference is and what you want. So that's the next question. Which one do you buy? If you have a Mud Buddy or a Boss drive, you want the MB hex. And that looks like that. That's the one with the boss on the end, and it has the slightly larger hex, basically built for a .755 shaft. If you have a Gatortail, whether it is the new XD or the old GTRs, you want the GT hex, and it does have the XD cut. You can see the ring in there, but it also has the appropriately sized hex specifically made for Gatortail shafts. That's the difference. Short and sweet. Thanks for sticking around and watching. I hope this was helpful. Hey, if you want to check out a Roost, go to roostmarine.com and try it out. I think you'll really like it. It's a complete game changer.